Right, welcome to 0 to 100, my first 1,000 days in business podcast. I guess from the start, I should explain why I've decided to do this podcast in the first place. And there's a couple of reasons to it, but I guess the main one being starting a business was always something that I'd wanted to do. I'd been in the telco space for 16, 17 years, worked for a number of different companies, some that I felt did really well, some that I felt did things really poorly. And I felt like I would make a difference in the telco space if I had my own business and were able to do things the way I felt they should be done. But I never really had the confidence to do it. I didn't feel like I had the resources around me to do it. And it did make things difficult watching for years and years and years these companies that I worked for that I just felt like should be doing things a better way, but they were hamstrung in some ways and what have you. But I'd always wanted that in my mind. I was always going to have a business one day. It's funny, the way I guess I started the business was I was working for one company over here in Perth, but I ended up selling a property that I had in Sydney that gave me about $70,000 in cash flow to actually go ahead and start the business, which was one of the biggest things I was worried about. And even talking to other people, it is one of the biggest concerns that what are you going to do? You've got a family, you've got a mortgage, you've got bills that need to be paid. And, I was on $100,000 a year job that I quit just before I started Aria. And so it was a big concern at that point. How am I going to replace $100,000 a year income to support my family? And it is a real stress. And it's funny, one of the there's a number of videos on YouTube from Gary Vaynerchuk, who actually talks about the idea of selling your home and using that money to start a business and renting instead of paying off a mortgage. And it's funny that I actually kind of did that before I ran into Gary's content, but it makes a lot of sense, because without having done that, I probably wouldn't have been in a spot financially, I guess, to feel like I could support my family through that initial period of owning a business without having that capital behind me. So I actually think there's a lot of value to what Gary talks about in that content. But look, that was one of the things that was, I guess, in speaking to people, is a big concern. Okay, I want to start a business. I want to get on with this. I know I can do it better than what these other guys are doing it. But how the hell am I going to support my family? How the hell am I going to pay my mortgage or my rent or my bills when all this is going on? And I don't know where I'm going to get clients from in the first 3 to 6 months. And I'm not, this isn't a Instagram influencer thing where everybody thinks they're going to be millionaires in the first 6 months. And it's not, I'm going to blow up on YouTube and I'm going to be making $100,000 in ad revenue every month. It doesn't work that way. And I should know my YouTube channel has, at this point, not got a massive amount of followers, but that's more on me for not putting in the work to promote it, I guess. But look, I just wanted to put this series together because there's so many people out there that were in the position, or are in the position that I was in a few years ago, and just have no idea where to start. They don't have the confidence to do it. They don't even know, okay, when I start, and it's all the stuff that I went through, right? It's, okay, how do I set up a business bank account? I felt like I needed a website, business cards, all of this sort of stuff. A CRM for me is the big one. And I know a lot of companies that have been very successful companies and never used a CRM, and that blows my mind, because that was the first thing that I had even before I had a website, before I had business cards, before I had anything. Because working in telco, if you use a CRM correctly, you realize just how valuable they are. And I'm quite certain that's not just in the telco space. But yeah, so look, today's episode is titled Before Day One, and it's essentially around all of those sort of things, the things that I realized that I wish I'd known before day one. But I realized probably in the first 1 to 2 months of, oh shit, I wish I'd had this in the first month. I wish I'd had this. Why did I start a business without having this in place? And look, the one thing I'm glad I did do that I know a lot of people neglect in that first period is having that CRM in place. Look, there's plenty of CRMs out there. I use Salesforce Lightning myself. And when I looked at it, I'd used Salesforce for years in telco because that's what, Telstra, Optus, whatever, that's what a lot of those guys use, and the dealers that I'd worked for. And so I understood the power of it, understood how good it was, even with their lockdown versions. But once I actually had my own one, and you can customize it, you can do, like, I've got reports coming out my ears now. I live on reports and dashboards and all of that sort of stuff. And I love it because I can go in and create whatever I want whenever I want it. And it's amazing how powerful that is. But, using the CRM correctly was one of the banes of my existence when I was a sales manager, because I could never really get the sales reps to use it properly. And they just didn't understand the power behind it. So that was massive. So I would say to anybody looking at starting a business, it doesn't really matter what sort of business it is either. I'm in telco, it works great for me, but I know people I know electricians, I know plumbers, I know solar installation repair guys. I know all those sort of companies, and the ones that have a CRM and can track their client data, know who their clients are, can use that data to actually market to them down the track with email marketing or newsletters or what have you. All of that stuff's invaluable, and so many people just completely neglect it at the very start because they think, okay, I need to put every cent I've got into getting that first client on board, or those first few clients on board, and they want to advertise here, there, and everywhere. But they don't think about the back end of, okay, what am I actually going to do once I get that client on? And how am I actually going to grow this business long term? It seems to be a lot of the time it's a short term mindset of, I just want to get the first client on board. I just want to get the second client. Now I just need to get my first 5. Now the first set. Like, it's all about sales, which is, you need sales when you're growing a business. Absolutely, you need sales. But it's how you manage that long term. I mean, nothing I do in my business is for the short term. It just isn't. And, as we go through this series, I'll explain a bit more about that. But absolutely everything I do in my business is for the long term. And if you want to build a long-term business that's going to be sustainable, you need a CRM. There's no two ways around it. Like, there's a bunch of free ones out there if you don't want to shell out. I mean, Salesforce Lightning, I was surprised. It cost me $420 for the year, for 12 months. And I've actually just renewed it again, coming up to this 3-year anniversary. And it's still exactly the same price. It hasn't gone up at all. So $420, which is not a massive amount, but there are free ones out there. I know there's a free version of HubSpot. I've not used it personally, but I know other people that have and think it's brilliant. But just whatever CRM you decide to use, get a CRM. That would be my number one. Like, I had a CRM before I had a website, business cards, a phone number for the business, an email, any of that stuff. And absolutely mandatory. I guess the second one, and look, this can be somewhat dependent on the type of business that you're looking at setting up. But the second one for me was actually having a proper domain email address. When I very, very, very first started the business, even before my actual day one, I was running just a Gmail email address. And it's not great. I don't think having your name at gmail.com is really a great thing, or even the business name at gmail.com is a great way to look at running the business. And I know, look, people can't afford big expensive website. I couldn't afford a big expensive website. My first website cost me $1,000. It's, and even that I probably could have gotten away with not having it. But look, having a email address with a domain, you can go and buy a domain name most of the time for, I think, $15 a year is roughly what a domain name runs for these days. So even if you just get a 1-year domain name to start with, then you go to Gmail and you set up for $10 a month, you can actually have an actual domain email address through Gmail. So, go to Crazy. I use Crazy Domains there's a bunch of other ones out there. So go to Crazy Domains or one of those other ones out there, find your domain name for whatever you want to call the business, which, look, at the end of the day, you want that anyway, right? Like, why would you start a business and not want the domain name? Even if you don't have a website from day one, you want to be able to have that so you can use it to build a website 6 months down the track, 12 months, whenever you decide that you want to have a website. So at least it's actually going to be there and you own it then. So lock that in, get your domain name. Like I said, $15 for a year. I would imagine anybody looking to start a business can afford $15 for a year. So, and then $10 a month for a Gmail email address. They're so easy to set up. Google will actually walk you through. You can actually buy, I believe, and I haven't done this for a little while, but I believe you can actually buy the the domain through Google itself. It kind of makes sense that you'd be able to. And then set up the email directly from that as well. So whether it's Crazy Domains or Google or wherever you get it from, that would be the next thing that I'd be looking at, is have that email address there. So you've actually got, mine's rob@ariatelcomanagement.com.au. That, nice and easy. It's, and it's there, it's yours, it's forever for $10 a month. I would suggest you need it. Look, obviously you need an ABN. I think most people realize that. I'm probably not going to go too much into that because I think that one's a little bit more obvious than some of these others. But what I will say on that is, when you get an ABN, and particularly when you're setting up the business in the first place, have a talk to an accountant and just get an understanding of which structure is actually going to be best for your business. Whether you need a proprietary limited company, whether you can be a sole trader, if you're going into a partnership, do you want to trust, do you not want to trust? All of that sort of stuff is very important to get right. So look, most people, most of the time, are going to start off as a sole trader, because you can start as a sole trader and move to a proprietary limited company down the track. All of that sort of stuff can be done. But it's important to look at, okay, how am I actually going to set this up? If it's just yourself, look, partnership, you don't even have to worry about. Obviously, it comes down to, are you going to do it as a sole trader or as a proprietary limited, and do you want to trust? Are you going to register for GST is another thing, because if you're making, at this stage, it's 75 grand, whether that number changes at some point ever down the track, most likely will. Are you making or expecting to make $75,000 or more? If so, yes, you need to register for GST and make sure you're charging it in your invoices. If not, no, you don't. If you register for GST and find that you're only making $50,000 for the year, you still have to charge the GST on the invoices, which is something else I've learned even only 2 weeks ago, because I asked the question for a friend of mine that was looking at starting up a business, and that was the answer. So all of that sort of stuff's important. But I think for the ABN on the whole, everybody knows you need an ABN to start a business. It's not, that part's not rocket science, right? From there, look, the rest of it, you can kind of, before the first 30 days, there's probably not too much more you need. I mean, you can have the argument that, do you want to have a website within that period? Do you want to have a business phone number within that period, other than just your mobile number? For my business, I felt that was necessary. I didn't want to be a telco business just running off of a mobile phone number. That didn't seem right to me. So very quickly, I did have a phone number. Business cards, look, obviously, if you're going out to see clients, you're going to want to have your business cards printed and ready to go. But again, that's going to depend on, do you want to have a phone number, a landline phone number on there, or just a mobile? What email address are you going to put on there? Are you going to put a website address on there? All of that sort of stuff kind of plays into it. So you kind of need that in place, I would argue, before you get business cards, just so that you've got that there. You know what to put on the card, so that when you're handing out something to a prospective client, or whether you're just networking or what have you, it's actually got the right information on there, and the way that they can actually get hold of you. And look, I think that's probably the majority of what I would, if I was starting a business from scratch today, they're the things that I would want in place, set up, ready to go before I even open the door, so to speak. I can't imagine having a business without a CRM. I don't believe I could operate a business effectively without one. And it always blows my mind that people have, when I come across people that have had successful businesses running for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they've never had a CRM. That blows my... And congratulations to them for doing it, but I don't believe that I could do it in my business, and I struggle to find, especially in this day and age with email marketing and what have you, and all the other tools that you can use within these CRMs. I could not run my business without one. I'm just thinking, what else could there be? What else within that first, or even before day one? What is it that you want in there before day one? I guess the other thing, a lot of it comes down to mindset, right? It's, are you ready to start a business? And are you starting a business in something that you actually enjoy doing? Or are you starting a business just because you've got a bunch of friends that have got businesses, or maybe you don't, and you just want to be the first of your friends group to have a business, and you feel like you're just starting one for the sake of starting one because you feel like it's the right thing to do, or you feel like this is just a good way to make money? I think a lot of it around that sort of mindset is where people get caught as well, though, because I've been fortunate in this space where I'm in a business that I absolutely love. People think I'm insane, but speaking to Telstra and Optus on a daily basis is actually something I enjoy doing. But I know a lot of people that have got into businesses where they don't actually enjoy the business. They're doing it as a way to make money, or they're doing it because they, as I said earlier, just they feel like everybody has to be an entrepreneur these days and everybody has to start a business. And I don't think that's the right way to go about it, because that's where you get to these people getting into burnout and, you know, having massive issues like that with mental health. Is because they're doing something that they don't actually enjoy. So I think one of the ways to look at, do you enjoy something, or is this worth starting a business around it, is what is it you actually enjoy doing, right? I know I've got friends of mine who have started businesses around trading cards. That was something that they loved doing when they were younger, and they've grown up and decided that that's what they want to do again, and that's a business that they've started, and I know one or two of them that have done very well out of it, because they get to do something that they absolutely love every day of their life. But I've seen others that have started up, whether it's a website or a what have you, around exactly the same thing, around trading cards, that just did it because they felt like in the bubble last year they were going to make a ton of money out of it, and they ended up getting screwed and not making a cent because they didn't really understand it. They didn't care about it at all. They just saw it as a money-making opportunity, and they ended up screwing themselves up because of it. So look, do something that you actually care about. And if you're not sure what you want to be doing, and probably this is even more important to, I guess, the younger generation as they're coming out of high school, and just there's such a push these days for whether it's Instagram influencers, or like everybody thinks they're going to have a YouTube channel that's going to kill it, or they're going to be a entrepreneur selling, I don't know, whatever the hell they want to be selling, but they're doing it because they want the money, or they want the fame, or they want the fortune, or what have you out of it. And it's not, they're not doing it because they absolutely love it. And I think there's going to be issues that'll come from that. There just will, because look, do something that you love, but if you're not sure, try it. Just, there's no reason why you can't try something, and for 6 months, if you think, okay, I'm going to give this a go, I'm going to go all in, I'm going to work my ass off, and in 6 months down the track, if you find, look, I'm not really enjoying it, then find something else you enjoy and try that. Like, I'm all for seeing things through to the end, so to speak, and not just quitting on something when it gets hard. But at the same time, if you're going to do something, you want to actually be enjoying it. And there's a million stories out there about people that have, again, they've started businesses because they wanted it for the money, and then they've 6 months later hated it, but felt like they're stuck. And they're in this business and they just can't get out, or they've got to fold the business, and then they're going to look stupid to everybody. It's not about looking stupid to people. It's about doing what you feel like you want to be doing. And if you're not sure what you want to be doing, try a few different things. I mean, this podcast is a perfect example of that. This isn't really, I guess, financially the best use of my time. It's just not. But it's something I want to do. It's something I did the same with YouTube. I wanted to try YouTube. I put out a bunch of videos on YouTube, and I got a heap of good feedback from them. Some negative, but you get that, and I couldn't give two shits about the negative feedback. But you try it, you taste it, you give it a go, and if you find that it's not your thing, then so be it. It's not your thing, and you move on to the next. I mean, I don't feel like YouTube as video content is necessarily my thing. I feel like podcast probably is going to be better than video because there's a bunch of different, for a few different reasons, but I just feel like it's actually going to be a better vehicle for myself than a YouTube video. And this is my first episode, and I'm sure we'll find out at some point along the line whether or not I'm right about that. And if I'm right, great. If I'm wrong, then okay, I'll move on to something else. Right, and the other thing I would suggest is read, or at least consume. I know some people aren't big fans of reading business books, but if not, consume. Go on YouTube, go on Google. YouTube may be better for this than Google, but it just depends on how you learn, I guess. But I spent, and still to this day, spend an inordinate amount of time reading business books or finance books, or watching business people on on YouTube. Well, LinkedIn's another great resource as well, but on YouTube, people like I mentioned him before, Gary Vaynerchuk, Tony Robbins, all those sort of people, the whole mindset shift that you need when going into business, and you go from being an employee. This is something actually another one Simon Sinek speaks about as well, is once you go from being an employee to, in his case, he talks about going to being a manager, but it's almost the same going to being a business owner. When you go from being an employee of a business where you're guaranteed to get X amount of dollars every week, to being a business owner where you go, oh fuck, I need to sign customers, otherwise my family's not eating. It's a mind shift, and it's a mindset that you need to have of giving and not just taking. And it's hard, it's so difficult, because you're in that spot of, exactly like I just said, oh shit, if I don't make sales this month, my family doesn't eat. And so immediately your mind is going to automatically go to, okay, I need to extract value, but that it might work in the short term, but in the long term it's not the play, because what you want to do is build clients for the next 3, 5, 10 years. You don't want to be building a business look, this is in my opinion, everybody can do it their own way, and I'm eternally grateful that most other telco businesses, almost all other telco businesses, work exactly the opposite to the way I do. I'm exceptionally grateful for that, because it allows me the opportunity to build those relationships on the long-term basis, rather than just going around and chasing sales targets every month and worrying about hitting that number. And it's made a massive difference to my business. I've got clients that I've had since basically day one. I've had clients that, I don't need to necessarily lock everybody into, I refuse to lock people into 5-year contracts or 4-year contracts or anything like that for phone systems, because it's just not necessary. It's ridiculous. I'd rather build the relationship with somebody and have them as a long-term client, rather than worry about, okay, now I've got this guy in for 5 years, he can't go anywhere, I'm going to get paid a shit ton of commission, and I can move on to the next guy and get them onto another 5 years. Like, it's short-term versus long-term thinking. And as I say, I'm eternally grateful that almost every single other telco company out there works the complete opposite to me, and I've done that on purpose, and we'll actually get into that later in the series. But I think that's kind of you need to work out which game you're playing. As to Simon Sinek's point, are you playing a short-term game where you just want to monetize every opportunity as quickly as possible, or are you playing a long-term game where you actually want to build a business and build a legacy for the long term? And it is a completely different mindset depending on which way you want to go. So I think that's important to get that right in your head as well before you actually jump in and decide to start a business. But look, I'll end it there. I hope that's been valuable. I hope people are going to see, I guess, what I'm wanting to achieve with this, as I said at the start, is I'm just wanting to give people a resource that I wish I had at the start. And look, I've learned so much from, as I said, Google and YouTube, but I really struggled to find somewhere that had everything in the one spot. And look, there's plenty of stuff that I've missed over the time as well. So, it's having that resource there to say, okay, well, before day one, this is what I wish I had done in setting up my business. Some of it I did, some of it I didn't do, and as we go through the series, that will become more evident. There's certain things that to this day that I still haven't implemented for one reason or another that I wish I had done a year or two ago. And so we'll go through that and I'll explain as to why that is and where the priorities lie and what have you. But I just feel like hopefully this will be of value to at least one person where they go, oh shit, I need a CRM. I can't start a business without one. If you got anything from this podcast, I'd say that would probably be the main thing is, okay, I need a CRM before starting a business and capture that information. But look, I'll leave it at that. If there are any questions or comments or anything further that you'd like me to speak to in future podcasts, please let me know. I do intend to be putting up one of these a week. They'll be going on I will be loading them onto my YouTube channel, but I'll also be loading them onto Facebook and LinkedIn as well. So if you've got any questions, by all means, comment on any of those points, or feel free to send me an email as well, and we can have that discussion there. So again, I hope people got value out of this. Thank you for listening and look forward to speaking to you again soon. Bye.